Good morning. Good morning. Oh my God. Thank you. Please take a seat. We will start this event. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jose Ivan Rodriguez Sanchez, and I'm a research scholar here at the Center for the United States and Mexico at the Baker Institute. It was a pleasure to have all of you, and I want to welcome you all to the halls of the Baker Institute. I want to thank American Business Immigration Coalition, ABIC, and the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for collaborating on this event. Our center has been addressing many of the critical issues on immigration for many years. We have learned that Americans need to understand the push factors immigrants have to come to the U.S. and their importance to the U.S. Immigrants are a key element, driver of the U.S. economy, the Texas economy, and the Houston economy. To have an idea, according to the American Immigration Council, immigrants represent around 22% of the Texas workforce and 24% of the Houston workforce. They support these economies not only by working, but by buying goods, paying taxes, innovating, and many of them as business owners. Key sectors of the Houston economy depends on them. Immigrants represent around 55% of the total workforce on the construction sector, 44% in agriculture, 34% in manufacturing, and 33% in hospitality. These people come to the U.S. to work, and given the current labor shortage in the U.S., immigrants can help alleviate this issue. So it's really important to know the role in the national and local economies, and that these immigrant workers complement native-born workers to generate economic growth and development in the U.S. Despite overwhelming evidence of immigrants' important economic and cultural contributions and the demographic strengths they bring to American society, the issue of authorizing migrant employment remains controversial in the political theater. This morning, a panel of experts will explore opportunities to expand work authorization for immigrant spouses and parents of U.S. citizens and potential impacts on Houston's growing economy. But first, we have two stellar keynote speakers who will provide the remarks on this issue, Commissioner Adrian Garcia and Senator Molly Cook. Because of the time, we are not going to have a Q&A with them. And please, Commissioner, take a seat here, and Senator Cook, you are here too. I will provide a brief bio of both speakers. Commissioner Garcia was born and raised in Houston's North Side neighborhood. He was first elected as Commissioner of Precinct 2 in 2018 and is now serving his second term. Commissioner Garcia has dedicated his entire career to public service and safety, first as a Houston police officer for more than 2 decades, later as a council member for the city of Houston, and as the first Latino elected as Harris County Sheriff. As County Commissioner, Garcia advocates for the needs of the 1.3 million residents living in the eastern portion of Harris County, with a focus on his Revive to Thrive initiative. This initiative focuses on revitalizing the precinct through strategic investment in infrastructure and economic opportunity while reducing the risk of gentrification. Under Commissioner Garcia's leadership, Precinct 2 has obtained multiple local and national awards for its innovative and community-focused approach to solving some of the present's most pressing challenges, including health disparities, workforce and small business concerns, flooding, and public safety. Texas State Senator Molly Cook is a sixth-generation Texas-born and raised in the Houston area. She earned a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the University of Texas at Austin and worked for a year on a general medical floor before moving to Houston to achieve her dream of becoming an emergency nurse. After 3 years of caring for medically complex patients who suffer from chronic illness and lifelong injuries, Senator Cook moved to Baltimore, Maryland, to study health policy at Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing and Public Health. Armed with her master's and experience working in healthcare delivery reform, consumer protection, community health programming, and policy advocacy, she moved back home to work fully in home health, nursing, and volunteer 40 hours per week organizing for the Beto for Texas campaign. So we are really honored to have both of you. Welcome to the Baker Institute. So we are going to start with Commissioner Garcia and then with Senator Cook. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, and thank you for having me, Dr. Murillo. I know we'll be hearing from you, but I see a dear friend, Gordon Kwan, the Honorable. Good to see you, Gordon, and our state representatives, Rosenthal and Morales. Let's give them a nice round of applause. Oh, and Jane Wu, not to be left out. Well, good morning, and to the distinguished panel that will be guiding a very, very important conversation. Thank you all for having me, and Council Member Manny over here from the city of Pasadena. Let's give that guy some nice recognition. So thank you to the Baker Institute. This is a very, very important conversation, and thank you for creating a safe space to have this conversation. It's important, especially with what's going on in our county, in our state, and absolutely in our country. And as a son of immigrants, my father having been one of the many who worked in this country as a bracero, when because of the war, the U.S. didn't have enough labor to keep its economy thriving and turned to a neighboring nation for a labor force while still resenting those who stepped up to work for unfair wages. For that reason, I want to discuss the significant value that immigrants bring to our local, state, and national economy, and advocate for a practical path to citizenship. In Harris County, we are showing the nation how we can be a stronger national economic force if we would be a more welcoming nation. We see locally the great contributions that are made when immigrants call our county home. It's unmistakable how immigrants are the lifeblood of our economy, fueling growth, innovation, at every level. Locally, immigrants start businesses that create jobs, revitalize communities. For example, consider the vibrant ethnic neighborhoods in many cities, including the city of Houston, that are filled with bustling markets, restaurants, and shops. These businesses not only provide services and goods, but also create employment opportunities for both immigrants and native-born citizens. According to a study by the Fiscal Policy Institute, small businesses owned by immigrants employ about 4.7 million people and generate over $776 billion annually. While some politicians like to say that Texas is the economic driver of the nation and how they support small businesses, yet hypocritically, they turn their backs on the potential workforce that can fill approximately 800,000 jobs that are currently open in Texas. In Harris County, there's approximately 500,000 available workforce, but do not have work authorization. At the state level, immigrants contribute significantly to the workforce in critical sectors such as agriculture, construction, healthcare, and technology In states like California and Texas, immigrant labor is essential to the agricultural industry, ensuring that crops are harvested, food reaches our tables. In healthcare, immigrants fill crucial roles as doctors, nurses, and home health aides, providing care to an aging population and addressing shortages in medical personnel like those that the Texas Medical Center is currently experiencing. The contributions by immigrants ensure that our industries remain competitive and our communities healthy. Nationally, immigrants are key drivers of innovation and technological advancement. They are overrepresented in STEM fields, contributing to research development that keeps our country at the forefront of global innovation. Immigrant entrepreneurs have founded some of the most successful, influential companies in the world, such as Google, Tesla, Intel, creating millions of jobs and generating billions in revenue. According to the National Foundation for American Policy, immigrants have started more than half of America's startup companies valued at $1 billion or more. Just look at the example of Jose Hernandez, the son of migrant farm workers who grew up to become an astronaut and now is filling some of our shelves with wines that his family now owns in California. If you haven't seen his movie, A Million Miles Away, I strongly encourage you to put it on your watch list. Moreover, immigrants contribute to the economy as consumers. Their spending on housing, transportation, food, and other goods and services supports local businesses and stimulates economic growth. They pay taxes, including income, property, sales taxes, which fund public services and infrastructure that benefit all Americans. In the greater Houston region, it's estimated that long-term residents pay $1.4 billion in taxes and possess nearly a $15 billion spending power capacity. It's indisputable that this population has been paying taxes and contributing to our economy for decades, while withdrawing from our respective governments far less than they contribute. Just imagine how much more they could contribute if they had reasonable access to work authorization. There's no doubt that expanding work authorization is smart and good for business. And that must be the conversation that needs to be had with those who couldn't make this happen. Because the argument of doing so because it's the morally right thing to do has fallen on deaf ears. If those in power would do it for the morally right reason, it would be because they recognize that in Harris County, there are tens of thousands U.S. citizens that are married to a non-citizen. We have over 150,000 children who live with an undocumented parent. Like African-American parents who have to have the talk with their kids, undocumented parents have to have the same charla or talk with their kids in case they don't come home because they've been detained and potentially on track to be deported. Given the immense contributions of immigrants, it is clear that there should be a practical path to citizenship. A clear and fair process for obtaining citizenship would not only recognize the value that immigrants bring, but also enhance their ability to contribute more fully to our society. Citizenship provides stability and security, allowing immigrants to invest in their futures and those of their children. It encourages civic participation, fostering a sense of belonging and responsibility within the community. A practical path to citizenship would also benefit the economy by reducing the uncertainties and barriers that currently hinder immigrants. It would allow them to pursue higher education, access better job opportunities, and start new businesses without fear of deportation. This would lead to higher earnings, increased tax revenues, and a more dynamic and robust economy. In conclusion, immigrants bring extraordinary value to our local, state, and national economies. Their contributions as entrepreneurs, workers, innovators, and consumers are indispensable. By establishing a practical path to citizenship, they can harness their full potential fostering economic growth, and creating a more inclusive, prosperous society. It is not only a matter of fairness and justice, but also a strategic economic imperative. The success of our economy depends on them being able to live outside the shadows. That creates more victims, economic victims, as well as crime victims. So I thank you for your work and advocacy to bring common sense immigration reform with a practical path to citizenship. But I urge you to join me in urging our national leaders to act and quit playing politics with our economy. Thank you very much. And now I'll turn it over to our senator.
Good morning, y'all. I am Senator Molly Cook, and I'm extremely honored and grateful to be here today to share with the immigrant community and the folks advocating for them in Harris County. I want to take a moment to extend my gratitude. We want to thank the Baker Institute Center for the U.S. and Mexico, the American Business Immigration Coalition, and the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to speak and listen and learn today and gathering all of us. I join the call for President Biden and Congress to expand work authorization to Harris County residents. I am an emergency room nurse, and I interact with on-the-job injuries and workman's comp issues in the ER pretty regularly. And those without status are often in a very tricky situation that can compromise their health and safety and discounts not just their contributions to our workforce, but also, and more importantly, their basic humanity. Expanding work authorization is the just thing to do, and it is the smart thing to do. Workforce authorization is a life-saving policy from every angle, and it's a popular position among everyday Americans. A poll from the Wall Street Journal in March showed that 74% of American voters support a path to legal status for long-term undocumented immigrants. Especially considering the dangerous impending effects of SB 4, we do not have time to waste to protect our neighbors here in Harris County. And for those reasons, I urge President Biden and Congress to expand work authorization. I want to close by highlighting a very special person who will be speaking on the panel today. Yolanda Bats is a U of H student and aspiring nurse, and it is very courageous to choose nursing and to speak on panels and to speak up for your community. And I'm very grateful to be here and learn from you today, Yolanda. Nurses are essential to the workforce, health, and vitality of all of our communities, and Texas is very lucky that you're here. Thank you to everyone joining us today and for the opportunity to celebrate our communities and learn more about this important issue from each of you.
Thank you very much to Adrian Garcia and Commissioner Garcia, and Senator Cook for their words. And now we are going to have a panel. Juan Carlos Cerda is going to be the moderator. So,
thank you so much, Senator Cook, for your remarks and for your support for this very important issue. And we're very grateful for your leadership. And we want to congratulate you on your recent victory and your new position here as a Texas State Senator. I'm Juan Carlos Cerda, and I am the Texas State Director for the American Business Immigration Coalition, or ABIC. ABIC is a bipartisan coalition of more than 1,400 CEOs, employers, and business leaders with the mission of promoting common sense immigration reform. I want to thank the Baker Institute for hosting this conversation. As a DACA recipient and a graduate from Yale University, I'm an example of what residents, long-term residents, can achieve and accomplish and contribute to our economy when we have access to work authorization. Thanks to a work permit, I was able to legally work as a public school teacher, obtain a driver's license, and live the American dream. Today, we will also be hearing from a dreamer, a U.S. citizen a Hispanic business leader, a policymaker, and a legal expert about why President Biden and Congress can and should expand work permits for other long-term residents, including the immigrant spouses of U.S. citizens, dreamers without DACA, and residents who have paid taxes and lived in the U.S. for many years. I also, again, want to thank Representatives Morales, Texas State Representative Morales, who's in the back, Texas State Representative John Rosenthal, who is also here, Texas State Representative Jean Wu, who was also in the room, as well as Pasadena City Council member Emmanuel Guerrero. Is Houston City Council member Joaquin Martinez also in the room? Thank you so much, Council member, for being here. We really appreciate it. I believe Houston ISD trustee Adam Rivon also might be here. Are you in the room? Thank you so much, trustee, for being here. And Galena ISD trustee Jose Jimenez, are you here? No worries. Is there anyone in the room who's an elected official that I may have missed? Thank you to our local elected officials for being here. It's now my pleasure to welcome our panelists to the stage. Panelists, please come join me up in the stage as I call your name. For those of you in the audience, please hold your applause until I finish introducing them. First, we have Jorge Avila. Jorge is a proud American citizen, father, husband, and member of American Families United, a nonprofit organization representing U.S. citizens, their spouses, and their children. Jorge lives in Arlington, Texas. Next, we have Yolanda Bats. Yolanda is a senior at the University of Houston at the Katy campus studying nursing. She was born in Totonicapán, Guatemala, and grew up in the greater Houston region, graduating from B.F. Terry High School in Rosenberg, Texas. I'm also pleased to introduce Lara Murillo, CEO of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, one of the most influential chambers in the nation. Laura holds a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a doctorate from the University of Houston, where she served as an executive for 15 years and became the youngest director in U of H history. Prior to her current role, she served as an executive at Memorial Hermann Texas Medical Center for 7 years and served on the CEO's executive committee. An accolade of numerous awards, Laura is, in my estimation, one of the most influential Hispanic business leaders in Houston. Next, we have Chris McCarthy, Chief of Staff for Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia. Chris has a bachelor's degree in international affairs from Northeastern University and a master's of social work from the University of Houston. Prior to working as Chief of Staff for Congresswoman Garcia, he was District Director and Deputy Chief of Staff for the Congresswoman since 2019. Finally, we have Rachel Magaziner, an associate at Munch Hart, where she focuses on corporate immigration and where she partners with corporate counsel, HR teams, and executives to design and implement immigration strategies tailored to their U.S. business needs. Rachel has experience in developing robust and customized immigration programs, as well as counseling domestic and international corporations on immigration practices and policies associated with corporate reorganizations. Please give a round of applause for all of our panelists. Jorge, Yolanda, Laura, Chris, and Rachel, thank you for speaking today. Let's start this conversation with Jorge. Jorge, tell us the story of your marriage, of your family. How did you meet your wife? And why did she have to leave the U.S. to apply for a green card?
Good morning. My name is Jorge Avila. I live in Arlington, Texas. I'm a U.S. citizen married to an immigrant. My journey to, closer, sorry. I work for a company called Fruit of the Earth Research in Grand Prairie, Texas. We do, well, that's where I started my career, where I was able to meet my beloved wife, Daniela Avila. She wasn't not my type, but she got me. She got me, okay? And she got my wallet, okay? Yeah, my heart. After 2 years of dating, we got married. We've been married for 15 years and counting. We just celebrated our 15th anniversary, April 13th, this last month. Thank you. Thank you. I right now work 8 to 14 hours a day, trying to make ends meet for providing 2 household incomes. My wife right now resides in Ciudad Mante, Tamaulipas. She is my rock. She is my beloved wife. She is my everything. I didn't feel her presence gone until she got denied February 19th, 2021. Right now, she lives in Ciudad Mante, Tamaulipas, with my brother-in-law. And when I took her down there, they lived basically in a studio. I had to construct 2 bedrooms for them to live comfortable. That took money that I didn't have. Sorry. Ooh.
It's okay.
Yeah, thank you. I get a chance to visit my wife twice a year for her birthday and Christmas. I have to travel through 2 states that are really highly cartel managed right now. I go with my daughter, and I tell her every time, stay behind me, because Daddy won't let nothing happen to you. Right now, things down there are pretty bad. Last year, there was a shooting between the cartel and the police officers, and one of the elected officials last month was de-alived, let me put it that way. So this is the scenario I get to go through every year for the past 3 years.
Thank you for sharing, Jorge. And could you tell us really quickly what happened when she tried to apply for a green card?
When we went to her appointment in Ciudad Juarez, she was told, she got denied, told she had false claims on her record. After we did our due diligence with several lawyers and got her FOIA done, her record came out clean, but apparently they found something that I was not aware of. I'm going on 3 years now trying to get that information. 3 years counting right now. I have paid 3 different lawyers trying to get that information. I'm asking them, why is it taking so long to find something that will happen within 2 weeks of my wife getting denied?
Thank you for sharing that very tough situation with us, Jorge. I can't even imagine what it must be like to be separated from your wife. And you're a U.S. citizen. Yes, you know, you want to live here in the United States, correct?
Yes, sir.
I think that's an example of why President Biden and Congress should do everything in their power to reunite families like yours and to uphold the rights of U.S. citizens. There are many Texans who have dreams like Jorge's to have a career, have a family, own a home, but there are barriers to these dreams. And another person we'll hear from about her dreams is Yolanda Bats. Yolanda, tell us about your story and how your immigration status has impacted your academic journey.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yolanda Bats. So I came to the United States with my mom and my sister back in 2005 whenever I was 3 years old. And we originally settled in Brenham, Texas. There's nothing there, so my dad worked at a gas station. And eventually we moved to Warden, Texas, and again, there's nothing there. So he got a job at the only place there was, which is Buc-ee's. And he later moved on to Golden Corral. My mom also found work there as a custodian at a hospital and later as a cook at Cracker Barrel. And I have a younger sister who's also undocumented, and she is she's going into her junior year at the University of Houston, majoring in marketing. And I have a younger brother who is a U.S. citizen, and he is going into his junior year at high school. We later moved on to Rosenberg, Texas, which is a little suburb of Houston, and I graduated from B.F. Terry High School back in 2020. But obviously my immigration status has posed lots of issues to reaching higher education. For example, I applied to the University of Texas, and I was automatically accepted thanks to being top 10% of my class, but they only offered $1,000 in financial aid, and because of my undocumented status, I was very limited to the other types of financial aid that I could apply to, and so I wasn't able to attend the University of Texas. Back when I turned 15, I became eligible to apply to DACA, but President Trump had placed a lot of fears in my parents, and he later rescinded the program, so I wasn't able to apply at that time. And once the program was reopened, a few years later, I applied, I put all my paperwork in, and then a Texas federal judge ruled that the program was unconstitutional. And so my application was never processed. Like I said, I couldn't attend UT, and not having DACA really limited the undergraduate programs that I could apply to and the financial aid programs that I could apply to, and that was extremely discouraging, both financially and emotionally. Thankfully I was able to get some external scholarships that were specifically catered towards undocumented students with the help of an amazing program called College Community Career that really helped me out my senior year. And I was thankfully able to go to the University of Houston College of Nursing, and I'll be taking my NCLEX, which is the licensure exam for nurses, in exactly a week, so wish me luck, everybody. Thank you. But yeah, I'll be taking my NCLEX, but afterwards I won't be able to practice as a nurse because I don't have work authorization. Nursing school was also not without its obstacles. I often faced problems with finding clinical placements since I was undocumented, or I am undocumented. Hospitals like Memorial Hermann did allow me a space to learn and practice as a student nurse, but I faced considerable challenges and obstacles, discrimination even, from places like Methodist and other hospital systems in the Houston area. I didn't give up though, I always kept studying. I love being involved in the community, and I always volunteered at little church Bible study camps, after school activities with kids at Buckner International. I also became an interpreter at San Jose Clinic, where I helped out patients who were non-English speakers. And I was also involved with publishing some research with a professor at the University of Houston and the American Heart Association. So yeah, that's really it, I think.
Yay.
Wow, Yolanda, you're very courageous. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We're going to continue to encourage you to pursue your dream job, even though you don't have the assurance that you'll be able to actually legally work, but we're going to help you get there. Let's go next to Laura.
Yes, thank you.
Laura, a report from the Greater Houston Partnership anticipates 57,000 new jobs being created in the Houston region this year. How are your members impacted by the workforce challenges in this region, and how could expanding work authorization for long-term Houston residents like Yolanda help address these challenges?
Thank you. First, let's hear it again for these individuals who just spoke. Thank you so much. Some of you may understand the courage that it takes to share your story, so thank you for that. And I'd like to recognize our elected officials in the audience. Thank you so much for what you do every day and the sacrifices that your families make as a result, so thank you for that. In particular, as a business owner, one of our state representatives is here, and she understands it, and she also understands the immigrant story that she and the council member in the back there represent. We need more representation, and it begins with that. And so voting does matter, who you elect into office, having these conversations. Because for businesses, the biggest factor right now is trying to find employees. We get the calls every day, from small businesses to large corporations. We're here. We have the demographic to fill those jobs. And I guarantee you, we will help you, Yolanda, find your gig. So one of the things that we have done that I believe is really important is when we talk about comprehensive immigration, we discuss it from the standpoint of the economic impact. We've tried the other way, and I see our former board member, John Esquivel, in the room today, and it didn't work. It was not something that was compelling to many entrepreneurs, CEOs, et cetera. So we've moved that conversation to looking at data. And so we hold every year our data summit so that we can provide facts and figures, because those don't lie. Facts are facts, as our former chairman, George Gonzalez, would always say to me, facts are facts. So we stick to those facts. But the impact that it's having is that many businesses are shutting down because they cannot find employees. COVID had a devastating impact, in particular in our hospitality industry. Many of those jobs are lifelines to our families, but at the same time, we are also executives. We are also professionals, and one of the things that we have worked on very strategically is to change the perception of Latinos in the city, the state, and the country. That yes, we may have come from immigrant backgrounds, but like the two examples that we've just heard of, the opportunities that this country can provide if we would take away the bias, the discrimination, and the subtleties of racism sometimes that are quietly attacks on our community. And again, I go back to making sure we have the right people representing us. This is a huge problem. In Houston alone, Hispanic consumer spending is over $54 billion per year by Hispanics. And I don't remember the last time anyone asked me if my money was from a person who was documented or not. They take our money one way or the other. We're paying into the system. And so we need to keep this conversation of comprehensive immigration reform at the national level. As I look around, I think of my friend Jacob Monti, who regularly puts on Saturday webinars for people to come in and understand their rights, because they are afraid. And we get so many calls, going back to your question. I'm here, I'm undocumented, I have a business, I don't know where to go. My son or daughter is graduating from high school, they're trying to go to college. Where can they go? What can they do? And it takes all of us. And the work that I've seen Michael Trevino and Paul and others in this room for decades, we're still having the same conversation. It's only manifested to worse. And I'll end with this. As the daughter of immigrant parents, my father earned 50 cents an hour laying tile. And their two youngest granddaughters, my daughters, have graduated from Columbia University and Georgetown. And to know that my daughter's here today, 21, Mia, works with the Vice President of the United States of America and flies domestically and internationally. She spent 2 weeks in Germany as a point person, as an advanced associate for the White House at 21. And then on her paternal side, her grandfather laid the brick in front of her dormitory. It's no small coincidence. So we are very passionate on this stage and in this room. Who you vote for matters. And given the opportunity, Yolanda will go so far. And look how far she has gone with nothing. And this is the fear that we have created in this country, that people like Yolanda might succeed. We are better than that. Thank you.
Very inspirational words, Laura. Thank you for laying out the needs of Hispanic businesses and Houston businesses at large. It's obvious that this conversation is something that needs to continue to happen, that Congress needs to do its job. But it has also been reported in both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal that because Congress has failed time and again to pass immigration reform, that President Biden and the administration are considering expanding what's called humanitarian parole and a work authorization for the long-term residents who've been here many years paying taxes. So I'd like to go next to Chris. Chris, give us, why hasn't Congress, risen up to the occasion? You work for Congresswoman Garcia. She has been a great leader. She's fighting every day for Houston businesses and for the Houston community. So why is it necessary, for President Biden to expand work authorization and humanitarian parole for long-term residents and to address our workforce challenges?
Thanks. So there's so many leaders in this room, and I feel like everyone already knows one of the main answers, but as Texans, we see this more than anybody else, but the rhetoric that is overcome the media in terms of what are immigrants and immigration, it has been poison to any sort of progress. We're fighting this in DC constantly. Just a couple months ago, there was a deal in the Senate about the border that came out, and while it wasn't perfect, there was room to grow on it. And within hours, it was dead on arrival. There was no chance of it going forward because of the leader of the Republican Party, a former president, who said he didn't like it. And everybody else fell in line because they were afraid to go up against it. So that's what we're dealing with, is people in Congress who are controlled by someone who's not even elected at the current time. We are constantly striving for better on this issue. The Congresswoman is the sponsor of the Dream and Promise Act, which would be a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients and TPS holders. It's bipartisan for the first time this session. We have 5 Republican co-leads on the bill. We are almost at 218 co-sponsors, which is the magic number. And we know that nationally, polls show us that nearly 80% of Americans want this bill to become a law. They support pathways to citizenship for Dreamers. But we know that even when we get the number of co-sponsors needed, the bill is not going to get a vote on the floor. The Republican leadership is not going to call this bill up because they don't want to have any sort of win for immigration issues that make it look okay to be an immigrant in this country. And they're going to do whatever they can to continue to demonize the border, to demonize immigrants. You turn on the news any day, you'll see the border with National Guard, and it looks like a war zone down there. And I can almost guarantee you it's only this 200-yard stretch of land in Eagle Pass where all of this is taking place. You can go to the border anywhere else and it's not going to be there. But they've turned it into a press conference at all times to push their messaging and push it forward. So we're going to keep working in Congress to try and get this done. But until then, we need President Biden to come through on promises that he made and deliver for the immigrant community. These are things that make sense, that the American people support. We are very hopeful in the next couple months that we're going to get some exciting new opportunities and executive orders from the White House. But we need to keep an eye on it too and make sure that we're not going backwards at the same time we move forward with dangerous border policy and restrictions on asylum. When we do things like that, we might as well have voted for the other party if we're going to have a president who is shutting the border down, restricting asylum seekers, and not allowing people to legally enter the country. So there's a lot of work at hand. We're going to keep fighting. Congress is going to keep fighting. Hopefully we'll have more. We'll have the gavel back next session, and if Speaker Johnson won't give the Dream and Promise Act a vote now, we'll take it up next year and keep pushing it. But for now, we need President Biden to deliver on these promises, and remember that beyond an economic impact, this is humanity. These are people's lives that are our neighbors, our friends, our family, our relatives. These are people that we want to succeed and be a part of our community. And so we need to show them that. And so we're hopeful that the administration is going to make some big moves to support the community in the next couple months, and we'll keep pushing on them for it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris. Please let Congresswoman Garcia know that we support her leadership on this issue. Let's now go to Rachel. Rachel, we've mentioned humanitarian parole, but can you tell us what this policy is in immigration law, and how has the executive branch used humanitarian parole in the past?
Sure. So at its core, humanitarian parole is a legal authority that allows foreign nationals to either enter or remain in the United States on a temporary basis who do not have an otherwise legal basis for doing so. Pardon me. An important note about what humanitarian parole isn't is a direct path to citizenship. Humanitarian parole does not give individuals an automatic or direct or even indirect route to citizenship in and of itself. What it can do is provide individuals with an enabling method or facilitate an already existing path that may not have been practical for them to begin with. Something important to note about humanitarian parole is that it is discretionary. Even when there are parole orders issued by the executive branch, each application is still reviewed on an individual basis, and it is reviewed on a discretionary basis. That means that no one person is simply entitled to it by way of eligibility or qualifications. Anyone who's worked in the immigration system knows what discretion means, and that means unpredictability, insecurity, and oftentimes, more often than not, unfortunately, frustration and heartbreak. Depending on the specific parole program that we're talking about, parole can be issued as a prior authorization for folks to come into the United States as a parolee, or it can be something what we call parole in place for individuals who are already here and meet certain qualifications that allows them to remain here in a protected status, temporary, not to be confused with temporary protected status, but a temporary, otherwise protected status. The way humanitarian parole has been used in the past is pretty interesting. It started, the first use of it, pardon me, was in 1956 by President Eisenhower. He issued an order authorizing the parole of about 50,000 Hungarian refugees into the United States. Since then, there's been over 100 different parole programs issued by executive order by the executive branch. In 1956, and in the immediate decades following that, humanitarian parole was typically used for refugee-based programs. In the more recent decades, specifically since 1996, which is our last big immigration reform, if you want to call it that, overhaul, humanitarian parole has taken on it is equally objective as it is subjective definition. Nowadays, the ambiguous definition is, would the parole satisfy or help an urgent humanitarian purpose or provide a significant public benefit? If you think that is specific, it is not. Anyone can argue for or against either of those in almost any setting. Ways that it's been used quite recently have been for Ukrainian refugees, Afghani refugees, Cuban, Haitians, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans, and something that isn't as widely known about are spouses of active military members. There's a parole in place, in effect, for spouses of military members who are otherwise here without any legal basis, and that is a clear example to me of how the government has been willing to and has effectively utilized the humanitarian parole program to not just benefit urgent public need, but also satisfy their own needs. That was a great reason, but a self-serving interest by the government to issue parole in place for military spouses. They didn't want to lose those military members. So we've seen the government exercise its discretion when it benefits them, and so we know it's possible.
Thank you for that very comprehensive legal explanation, Rachel. An applause for Rachel, who's really done a really great job of doing that. So we see that this policy is something that's completely legal and that can be used for significant public benefit. And one of the arguments that we use is that workforce shortages are a public issue, and filling those job shortages will help with lowering inflation and making sure that we have good quality goods and services. So there is an argument to be made that humanitarian parole can be used in case-by-case basis. So let's go back to Jorge, because he's somebody, and his wife could be somebody who could benefit from this policy. Jorge, can you tell us more about the separation from your wife? How's it impacting your daughter? How do you live it on a day-to-day basis? Tell us more about that.
Well, the experience of the separation has been incredibly challenging to us. I realized how much we had worked together as a team. I felt her presence missing right away. My wife and I are struggling spiritually and mentally because of the situation she's in right now. It had questioned us spiritually big time because she was a Catholic, and she does believe in everything that she prays for. Financially, it's been a burden because, once again, I had to provide for 2 households. The only bright spot is there's no mall where she's at. So that's the only bright spot. Other than that, what I give her per weekly is more than most people down there make in a week. It's pretty bad down there financially, for her to be able to get a job. She's also down there right now. She's almost like an immigrant down there to them because she left when she was 18. So this is 23 years ago. She has no status as fourth as a Mexican. She has no ID, no bank account, no job. So all her medical expenses comes directly out of my pocket. 5 years ago, we had a scare with her thyroid gland. We had a biopsy done to her. And the doctor told us every 6 months we had to take her in to get it checked out. Right now, where she's at, they don't have specialists down there. The closest specialist is like 2 hours away in the capital, Victoria. Okay. Right now, I'm currently working 2 jobs just to make ends meet, which I don't get a chance to spend time with my daughter going to school. She's going to CCT right now, and that's taking a big financial burden too, because I can't neglect one without the other.
Thank you, Jorge. I think something to highlight from what you just said is the fact that you're living here in Texas. You grew up here, you're a U.S. citizen, you got naturalized, and you made that choice to fall in love, to marry, to take that leap of faith, and to marry someone that you saw as your complement. And we see, one of the conservative ideals, or one of the things that American families are built on is this idea, of love. And you've decided to stay together despite the obstacles. So I think that's something that people should see, that you're staying together with your spouse. You haven't decided to divorce despite the challenge, and I think that's something really commendable. So we really commend you for that choice.
Thank you.
Let's go back to Chris. Chris, we talked about all the things that the Congresswoman has been doing to support American families like Jorge and American dreamers like Yolanda. What can the community and the public do to support her leadership on expanding work authorization for the spouses of U.S. citizens like Jorge and dreamers like Yolanda?
Yeah, it is important that everybody in this room calls their member of Congress as much as they can. Their senators, any elected official, you need to be reaching out to them and talking about things that matter to you. It is almost November. Pretty soon you're going to start to see members of Congress coming around a lot more for their campaign. And you should not let any of them come through any event you're at, or if they come to your workplace, without asking them about this issue. The numbers don't lie. The Congressional Budget Office came out with a report a couple weeks ago that estimates that immigrants are going to contribute $7 trillion to our national economy over the next decade, and that includes $1 trillion going straight into the government through taxes and things like that. So in addition to the economic impact, we need to focus on the humanity. When we speak to business leaders about this issue, we want to help frame it as, think of these people as your current employees, not an abstract idea. We hear all the time of people who call and say, my employee, something happened with immigration, they're gone, I don't know what to do. So do something before it's too late and before something does happen. Empower the employee now to have this work authorization. And I can't understate how important it is for people to work together and make their voices heard. You know, we're, again, in the forefront of this rhetoric battle in Texas. When you hear people saying things that aren't true, correct them. Tell them that's not accurate. Tell them it's not right, that there is no invasion at the border, that people are not coming here to steal jobs and take government handouts. We need to correct the record, and it's too easy for us to lose that battle because we have facts, but we don't have the inflammatory information that looks better on TV. So everyone needs to take it personally responsible to keep going out and talking about it as much as they can, organize any group you're a part of, and when you see these people campaigning to be reelected to their seats in Congress, speak up, ask them about this issue, especially people on the other side of the aisle, and let them know that you want these work authorizations and you want people to have the opportunity to be here and working and contributing and having a successful life.
Absolutely. I think those are important steps that the community and public can take to support not only the Congresswoman's leadership on this issue, but also our local elected officials throughout the Houston area. Rachel, let's go back to you for a minute. If the administration were to expand humanitarian parole for the spouses of U.S. citizens, what could that process look like, and how would you compare it to how DACA was implemented in 2012 to allow young folks here who, grew up here, know no other, in most cases don't know other countries as home, and were educated here, went to schools here, and they just grew up and they were like, what do I do now? I can't legally work. How would you compare that process?
Oh, okay. I'm going to own this up front. I'm going to kind of divert from that a little bit. I'll answer your question, but I want to focus on a few other important points.
Sure.
So the process itself is fairly straightforward. It takes executive order, executive policy. That is something as simple as a sheet of paper. What goes on behind the scenes is never simple. I don't want to minimize that. But the announcement of a policy with criteria and guidelines is all that it would take. The actual application process, again, I don't want to minimize how complicated every immigration process is. With that said, the application process itself is relatively is really emphasized there, relatively straightforward. It's usually a matter of a form, maybe two, depending on the nature of the parole. And then submission of your eligibility documents showing that you do qualify for the parole based on that specific program's criteria. What would that mean? That would mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. It would mean family reunification, continued family unity, and also strengthened economic performance in the Houston area. So something, and I know nothing about Jorge's wife's situation, so this is all me making some maybe outrageous presumptions, but something that spouses of U.S. citizens go through quite often is having to consider whether departing the U.S. would trigger a bar. So I wouldn't say most, but quite a few individuals, undocumented individuals who are married to U.S. citizens may, in theory, be eligible for their green card. And I say in theory because practically they are far from anything of that sort. What that means is, as a spouse of a U.S. citizen, they are, again, in theory, eligible to file numerous applications in a specific order with exorbitant filing fees to obtain essentially a pre-waiver to depart the United States to obtain their green card at a U.S. embassy or consulate abroad. That is anything but a given. It is wildly expensive. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars at a minimum most of the time. And that process, on average, takes 3 to 4 years. If you're lucky, it'll take less. If you're unfortunately not falling within the law of averages, it'll take more. And by receiving parole, whether that be parole in place or a prior grant of parole. That could eliminate, not for everyone, but for a significant number of folks, eliminate the need for that travel. The reason that travel is so risky is that once someone has been here for a certain period of time without a certain level of protection or status, if they depart the United States, they're automatically barred from returning for a period of 3 to 10 years, and that's going to depend on their specific situation. People can get waivers for that to allow them to return sooner, but again, we're talking $20,000 at times for a waiver. And I don't need to tell y'all how expensive that is, especially when most attorneys, if you're in private practice, you can't afford to do things pro bono. That's kind of the age-old perpetual cycle of being in private practice immigration, is how do you reconcile the humanitarian, I don't want to say urge, like you're in immigration for a reason. Nobody is in immigration who doesn't have a heart and compassion, but at the same time, you have to keep your lights on. And that, unfortunately, our clients take a direct impact on that front. On the economic side, on the I wouldn't call it the flip side, but on the other end of it, companies would be able to fill positions that they aren't otherwise able to fill. Let's see, Texas has over 800,000 non-farming jobs available right now, and that was the most recent count at the end of March of this year. We only have at the moment about 80 able, willing, and qualified workers for every 100 jobs. Let's just talk hypothetically for a second. Let's say that there were 100 workers for every 100 jobs. There was someone for every job out there. What if they weren't all authorized to work? Companies would be and currently are forced to make decisions. Do they hire individuals to meet their bottom line, to fill those roles, knowing that they aren't work authorized? At that point, the company is taking a huge compliance risk. The fines for companies to hire individuals without proper work authorization can range to the hundreds of thousands, depending on, in theory, millions of dollars, depending on the size of the company and the nature of the violation. So with parole programs, we would be providing not just individuals with the micro level work authorization that they want, deserve, and need, but we'd be providing the economy with the supply that they need to meet their demands. Yeah, something to consider.
Absolutely. And how would you compare it to the way the DACA program was implemented? Do you remember when the DACA program was implemented?
Sure.
Tell us what seeing that process was like as an attorney.
Seeing that process as an attorney. That process was and is chaotic. Probably not the answer you were looking for. But it is something that I think would be utilized by the masses almost immediately. I think that we would see quite a bit of government inconsistencies in the adjudications. I think that would be a big, I don't want to call it a problem because it's a problem to a solution. It would be a big hurdle for folks to stomach and overcome. Anyone who's worked or even dabbled in immigration knows that if you disagree with the decision, it is, I don't want to call it impossible, but it is quite difficult to get it overturned. Saw quite a bit of misadjudications of DACA. My hope and goal would be that we wouldn't see similar trends for the parole program. But I do think that the outcome would, or the output of that would be very similar in that we would see individuals in the masses coming forward and being able to provide their expertise, their labor, their skills in areas that the economy was severely lacking in before. I think we would see a huge economic upturn, and we'd see companies that were hesitant to involve themselves in the immigration debate before be far more willing and eager to participate in those conversations moving forward once they were to reap those benefits personally.
Thank you. I think that is a good answer and an answer I was looking for, so thank you for that.
Sure.
Again, we're talking about residents who've been here many years, and in many cases are U.S. citizens like Jorge. Jorge, if the process that Rachel describes, which is humanitarian parole and then access to a work authorization document, becomes a reality, what would be your and your wife's plan for the future if you were to be reunited through humanitarian parole?
If we're reunited through the humanitarian parole, our first step will start rebuilding our savings. We dream of starting a business together, which will significantly improve our lives as we talk about right now. I will feel blessed, we feel blessed and excited to have a second chance if possible. To President Biden and the lawmakers, I want to convey my hardship. We need to relearn life together and to overcome our struggles. It is crucial to be careful if there are no progress on humanitarian parole. I may not even vote for Biden if that does not happen. Our kids will remember who will help us out. President Biden said he would not separate families. My family's still separated right now. Today, he continues separating us from our beloved ones, including U.S. citizens' children from their parents. I call on him to expand humanitarian parole and work authorization for immigrants like my wife and allow her to return to the U.S. He should allow families like mine to live together in the country we call home, the United States of America. I also ask Biden to let's suit up like John Rambo and let's go get my wife, please. No children, no children, no women, please. Thank you.
I wholeheartedly agree with your sentiments, Jorge, and it's, Chris mentioned that there will be executive orders in the coming months that the administration will do in order to address what Congress has not done on immigration. So President Biden can and should expand humanitarian parole and work authorization for the spouses of U.S. citizens like Jorge. Yolanda, you also need work authorization in order to pursue your dreams and your aspirations. What are your life goals, your career aspirations, and what's your message to the public and to our lawmakers?
Sorry. Looking forward, I'd like to go back to graduate school to become a nurse practitioner. And my passions really lie in breaking barriers to health access for those who are non-English speakers and who come from underprivileged communities and they don't have access to healthcare the way that we would in Houston. But yes, and my desire to become a nurse, it stems from accompanying my mom to her to her visits at the hospitals and having to translate for her. I often translated for her starting when I was just 5 years old. And it was a little scary as a 5-year-old to have to do that. But I want to help break those barriers that other people might be facing. I'd also like to buy a house in the future and provide my family with some security. I'd like to travel and help others as a nurse as well. And if the DACA program were reopened or if work authorization was expanded, then I would apply to advanced parole and I'd go see my grandparents, the rest of my family who I haven't seen in 19 years. Sorry. But yeah, these challenges just really make it obvious that expanding work authorization or some kind of legal status would make it a lot better for the communities. There's a lot of people out there like me who are very eager to take part in their communities and to be part of the economy, and they just need the chance with the work authorization. For me personally, I spoke to Memorial Hermann and Methodist hospitals about maybe being able to get a work visa, and they both declined. I also applied to various other hospitals in the Houston area for their nurse residency programs, but due to my immigration status, I was often met with repeated emails stating that I would be ineligible to work at the time. There's just a lot of people out there who are in my situation, and we would just love an opportunity. And I would hope that President Biden and Congress work towards expanding some type of legal status or work authorization so that we can fully be part of our communities. Because right now, being able to achieve my dreams is just a little bit difficult without work authorization. And yeah, I hope that one day I'll be able to get there.
Thank you, Yolanda. Hang in there. We're going to continue to urge President Biden and Congress to expand work authorization for dreamers like you who are American on all but paper. Laura, the Houston Hispanic Chamber has a leadership development program called the Emerging Leaders Institute. Can you give us examples of dreamers that have participated in that program? And what have you seen dreamers like Yolanda achieve and contribute to the Houston economy and community?
Thank you. Well, I'd like to recognize one of our emerging leaders who's in the audience today. He's our first elected official. He is the council member out in Pasadena, Manuel Guerrero. Thank you so much. A shining example of someone who cares about the community, who's taken that bold step into serving as an elected official, having been raised by a single mother, and has just been an American who's here in this great place that we call Houston, Texas, and Pasadena, of course, making us proud and understanding. I mean, I do not want to ever follow Jorge or Yolanda on a panel again, because I can see the tears, and I see even, our moderator just, it's if you don't feel the heartache of these individuals, then you might want to go to the doctor when you leave here. But I would like to say this. I want to thank the non-Latinos in this room for being here. Thank you. And before I address the Emerging Leaders Program, here's what I know. Here's what I believe, is that talking amongst ourselves is good. It rallies us to go out and individually and collectively do our parts. To make a change, we need to talk to the non-Latinos, mostly men, mostly white, mostly Republican. And that's the space that your Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce has been in for the last 15 years with this particular conversation. If it impacts their wallets, their bottom line, their bonuses, their company, their corporations, we're getting there. But we have to keep pushing. We have to keep providing them, whether they want it or not, data. And they are the ones who are funding our elected officials at the national level. The money to get people elected is what those elected officials will listen to. We might not agree with this process, but it is what it is. And if we look at the top donors and we visit with them and we share our data with them and we continue to push on this issue, I do believe that they can be the ones to convince those who don't want to have the conversation, see us as the enemy, have continually tried to marginalize us. And so we must continue this conversation with those in power and with those with the economic wherewithal to have influence over elected officials who have not done their job. Even though over 75% of this country has said, this is what we want. So we'll stay focused on that. The Emerging Leaders Program, we have seen many undocumented DACA students who have done phenomenal things. And what it shows is the resiliency, doesn't it, of a Yolanda. Imagine every door closed to her, and yet she sits before you. How old are you, Yolanda, if you don't mind me asking?
22.
She's 22 with relatively, in this country, nothing. We must help Yolanda. We must do this for them. Many families, imagine, that are a home that have some individuals who were born here, others who were born there, and every combination you can think of. And people like Yolanda and here, this gentleman who easily could say, you know what, I'm done. But he's remained diligent and committed to his wife and daughter and family. There are thousands of more out there. The Emerging Leaders Program has brought individuals together to say, we're here for you. We know you're the first to graduate from college. We know you're the first to graduate from high school. You're the first to have a professional job. You're the first to be elected to office. And again, I go to John at the early years when we started this and tried to start this. It was no, not needed, no money, not needed. Keep believing that things are needed. Keep believing that you're making a difference. And keep talking to those who are different from us, and have them sit in this room to hear these stories. So that is my regret, is that we don't have more of those who are opposed to this conversation in the room. So we shall do better. We will continue to do better. And it just takes one person to change their mind about this, to begin this movement. And I believe that we can, because they are desperate now for workers, for executives, for employees. They're feeling it just a little. And we need to show them that we're not just Maria who takes care of their children, or Jose who washes their car. We are more than that. And we will continue through this Emerging Leaders Program, through the Chamber, through our television programs with an audience of over 3.3 million in the greater Houston region to tell that story. That we are people like David Medina, who has been at Rice University for over 30 years now? 33 years advocating for more representation at this great university. So again, my goal when I leave here is I've already texted, I'm sorry you've seen me looking down at my phone, but I've texted 4 people to take care of you, Yolanda. And we're gonna make this happen.
Wow, thank you for your leadership, Laura, in directly addressing this problem, directly addressing Yolanda's situation, and also for creating these great programs that will create future leaders that will change the game on this issue. You've given some really great examples of, what we need to do to change the narrative on this issue. And as a Texas State director who works with both sides of the aisle, I'm reminded every day of business leaders like Woody Hunt of Hunt Companies and Steve Stephens of Amegy Bank, who are lending their influence, their capital to work with both sides and with the population that you mentioned that we need in order to win on this issue. So with that in mind, ultimately lawmakers are the ones who will make policy that will change this issue. So Chris, like you said, Congresswoman Garcia has been the co-sponsor of the American Dream and Promise Act that would help individuals like Yolanda. How can we pass this legislation or legislation like that next year? What's the path to that? How do you see this playing out in the next Congress?
Yeah, well, the election is immensely important and consequential. That's no secret, everyone knows that. But I think it is, as Laura was saying, events like this and having those tough conversations. Yolanda is clearly one of a kind. But there are over 250,000 people in the same situation where they were too young to apply for DACA and are now stuck in this transition period where they can't get help for anything. Jorge is talking about his family, which is his entire world, and there are thousands of people in the exact same situation where they are separated because someone left the country to try and do things the right way and was not allowed to return. So it's these stories that we need to keep amplifying and letting people share their experiences and what they want to bring to this country. During COVID, we saw DACA recipients step up all across the workforce. They were doctors, nurses, teachers on the front lines. There were stories of EMS workers, an ambulance that was 2 DACA recipients working together to save lives. We are limiting the potential of our country and our greatness by not allowing everyone to contribute everything they have, because everyone here wants to give what they have to this country, and we're not allowing them to do so. Houston is a great place for us to start because we are so diverse and unique in that we celebrate that diversity, and so we need to make sure that we are highlighting stories around our city, whether it's in the East End or Gulfton or Sharpstown. There's individual unique communities all over this city that have stories to tell and will make huge impacts on the benefit of our city if we're able to empower them. So we need to keep sharing these stories, amplifying these voices, and making sure that there is no question in people's mind left about who is someone who's currently undocumented, what can they bring to the table. Stop making assumptions for them. We need to give them the information so that no one can assume anything about what the immigrant community is and what they want to do.
Thank you for laying the path ahead, Chris. Something that I think we should mention, the context in which we're in is, we're waiting for court rulings from the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals on SB 4, which would allow law enforcement to arrest anybody who crossed the Texas-Mexico border without inspection, and on the DACA program, which allows individuals like myself who have grown up here to legally work. So we see that there's urgency for legislation because of those factors. So I just want to give kind of the final word to Laura, because you're one of the highest achieving Latinas here in Houston, one of the highest achieving Mexican American women. What advice do you have for undocumented students like Yolanda about achieving their dreams and aspirations despite these challenges, and how will the Houston Hispanic Chamber continue to fight for them so that they don't, quote unquote, graduate into the shadows?
Thank you. Well, 3 words, and it goes to anyone in the audience, specifically to those who are struggling through this truly inhumane treatment, in my opinion, and that is people, passion, and persistence. Specifically, there are many people in this room and outside of this room that are, in fact, willing to help and can help. Unfortunately, we have failed because we don't ask for that help sometimes. So there's usually a workaround if you look for it. Continue to seek out people who can help you. Ask them. Number 2, be passionate about whatever your circumstance is. Getting your family back reunited in this country. If that is your mantra, then continue to seek the support. Live off of that passion to take that next bold step. And be persistent. Continue to work hard to fulfill your dreams and reach out to others. And through those 3 vehicles, I do believe that it can be done. And that the rest of us who are fortunate to have been born and raised in this beautiful country, that we do our part, and that we not forget that our parents, some of us, mine included, came here across the Rio Grande as teenagers. In my case, gave birth to 9 children because they wanted a better life in this country for themselves and their children. And it is our duty to help others live this American dream in this melting pot we call America. We must. So I encourage those who are here, undocumented, to continue to find ways to stay here, to find the support that they need. And I look at my friend Cesar, who has gone through every hoop possible to be here today with us, to be in this country, all of his struggles, the story of not seeing his family, the videos of him going back and seeing his family. We must do our part. I will end with this. We must put pressure, on those who are of wealth and means so that they can put pressure on those who represent us. And it's not to say that they don't listen to us as Hispanics, as minorities, as Asians, but we're going to move faster with the white man and the white woman who have grown up with these elected officials to say, it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Those are tremendous words of hope, Laura, and we will rise to that challenge that you have presented before us. Thank you. There's time for some questions. I have a few questions from the audience. Chris, you mentioned that the Republican leadership you see it as an obstacle to work authorization and a path to legal status for people like Yolanda and Jorge's wife. Yet there's some Republican co-sponsors of the American Dream and Promise Act. I believe there's 7 or 8 of them. What arguments have been particularly effective in persuading Republicans to join supporting this legislation?
Yeah, so we approach every Republican with the same information, the stats, the polling that shows how wildly popular this idea is of a pathway to citizenship. But at the end of the day, the members that have signed on to co-sponsor have constituents in their district that came and told them their stories. And it's those one-on-one interactions that matter more than anything I'm able to talk to another office about. It's these stories that they hear, and so that's why that is so crucial. And letting them know that we're not going to tolerate the games anymore, and just the polarization that's going on. We need to make sure they know that that's not what people want, even if it's, if you support the Republican representative and you don't agree with everything I'm saying, there's got to be a limit to how far they can push this immigration issue and how far we accept it and their supporters accept it before it stops. So the conversations are crucial.
Absolutely. And I'll just tell you from personal experience talking to Republican lawmakers that they do listen when they see that it's not just dreamers, not just U.S. citizen spouses that are benefiting, but it's their constituents, it's their business owners, their churchgoers who are in their districts, their community organizations that are impacted, the economy. They do see it when we show them, and there's various ways to do that, like has been mentioned on the panel. Sometimes it takes elections, sometimes it takes those one-on-one conversations, hopefully nothing more than that, but whatever it takes. So another question that the audience asked is, Laura, you work with lots of community organizations, including institutions of higher education. How have you seen institutions of higher education help get individuals, young people like Yolanda, on that path to use their talents and skills and join the workforce and live out their life goals after graduation or before graduation?
Thank you. Many universities realize the importance not only of recruiting our minority students, but retaining them. Retention is the bigger issue than the recruitment portion of it. The scholarships typically might be for 1 year. Then what do you do year 2, 3, 4? Not to mention the challenges of work. And so an example is the University of Houston and our dear friend, Dr. Tacho Mendiola, who has dedicated his life to higher ed. And I was fortunate enough to work with for over 8 years. And I remember some of the professors saying, well, you're hand-holding. How is this helping these minority students? And I said, well, that's very easy to say when you're 4th generation, your father was a professor, you're an engineer, and you have the funds and the means to go through college. But understand that we are often the first to go through these doors and sit in a classroom and not able to do some of the basic work that's needed in some of these classes. We need some support to help get us there because we didn't have the money to pay $50 an hour for a tutor. And so many universities understand that, but realize there's a great resistance to this. And when you look at Texas and the ban on so many of these programs that are minority-based, affirmative action-based, diversity, equity, inclusion, anything that has any connotation to let's help minorities succeed, there seems to be a very outspoken and subtle way of doing away with them. So again, we must be smart and use different words to describe the same outcomes. And so again, as minorities, as women, as Latinos, we are resilient and we'll figure out a way. But again, I hate to keep going back to this, but it's going to take resources and money. I do believe as someone who understands that for a community that is able to have generational wealth and to be financially secure, that many of the things that ail our community can be fixed and improved. And that is why we need people such as Benny Agosto, who's a lawyer, whose parents had a 6th grade education and was able to donate and invest over $1 million in this chamber to do the advocacy and the work to support emerging leaders. And so, once again, bravo to the universities who are doing this, and bravo to those faculty and staff that figure out ways to continue to do it, because it does matter. And that we must realize that, again, it is a fear of us being educated, holding high elected office, owning our own businesses that somehow we've not been in. And people prefer us in the space that they have seen us in. So we must continue to demonstrate that through education we can go very far, and that if you are there, you have an obligation to find ways to continue to make sure those programs and services are available to young students. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. And I work with many university presidents, including former President David Lebron from Rice University and Renu Kaur from the University of Houston, and they support students like Yolanda, so we definitely need to continue to work with them to find a solution for this problem. Rachel, from your perspective, we have a question from the audience. From your perspective, what's some of the low-hanging fruit policies, low-hanging fruit in policy that you see as possible of being achieved in terms of things like a solution to the DACA program, maybe humanitarian parole for the U.S. spouse of U.S. citizens? What's your view of that as a lawyer?
Oh, the low-hanging fruit. I don't know if there is such a thing in immigration. Work authorization. The first question you asked me is, what is humanitarian parole? And I gave you a very boiled down but legal answer. And I think the real world answer to that question is humanitarian parole is protection, work authorization, and economic development and growth. And I think if we are going to label anything as low-hanging fruit, I think work authorization gives everyone something that they want, right? Gives the laborers, the workers, the foreign nationals the ability to contribute in a meaningful way. The vast majority of people here who are undocumented want to work, and they want to work legally. Some of the stats earlier about folks who have no way to benefit from Social Security and the various welfare public benefits are still contributing by paying their taxes. I think that says a lot, if not everything, about the folks here. Having a work permit, a work authorization document through whatever program, whether that's parole in place, asylum, like name your program. So if you have work authorization, you're going to feel much better about your contributions. It's also going to give the economy a lot of what it's looking for. My favorite kind of corporate client is a first-time corporate client. I like someone who's come to us for their first immigration petition, and they say, we have this employee or this either applicant or employee who we really want to sponsor, we've never done this before, we've had a policy against it, because frankly, the word immigration sends, it either draws people in or sends them running, right? There's not really a middle ground there. And those first-time clients of ours, those tend to be the ones that become the most passionate about immigration reform. They see that the process wasn't as horrible as they thought it was going to be, yet not as easy as they would like for it to be. And those are the ones that become the most outspoken politically, and also the ones who are more eager to actually do community outreach and recruit individuals who they know that they can sponsor. Yeah.
Excellent. I think there's a common theme here. How can you not let someone legally work? How can you, if somebody wants to work and there's a business need for it, there's an alignment. And so that seems to be common sense, is why not let this alignment happen?
The age-old question, sorry to keep going there.
No, sure.
The age-old question that we get, I do a lot of work for companies that are looking to make an exit to sell their companies. And the recurring theme is, we know that we should do an I-9 audit. For those that don't know what an I-9 is, that is the identification and employment verification document that you must complete within your first 3 days of starting a new job. These companies know that in order to satisfy their representations and warranties as part of their purchase and sale agreement, they need to engage in that sort of audit. They need to become aware of, or have at least constructive knowledge of, any immigration liabilities, so that they can disclose those to the purchaser. But at the same time, and it's a double-edged sword, and let me pause there and say, most companies want to do that. Most companies want to do things by the book, right? Companies don't set out to break the law. Yet, on the other hand, a lot of them know that they're going to find substantial violations if they do that audit. And they are tasked with the decision of, do we do what we know that we should do, which is audit these folks, knowing that if they become aware of them, they are obligated to take action, which is typically firing those individuals, terminating them? Or do we continue forward and just have this this plausible deniability, if you want to call it, this blindness, and be able to continue to satisfy our demand by supplying ourselves with these laborers? And also, the prospect of selling our company is going to go away if we lose our labor staff. So that is kind of a catch-22, if that's the right term there. Frankly, it's a problem that comes up in almost every conversation that we have with someone looking to make an exit out of their company.
Thank you very much. I think that's kind of the quandary and the paradox of our broken system, our broken immigration system, is we need to make things align, and we need to address what the problems are and help Americans like Jorge, and what I consider to be Americans like Yolanda. So I really appreciate that expertise, Rachel, and I want to thank each of our panelists for your great leadership, your great courage on this issue. Please, everyone, give them a round of applause. They're great. I'll conclude with the following remarks. We know that there are problems affecting our communities, and these are our neighbors. They're people that you look in their eyes and they're human beings like you and me, and they're American in every way except for Yolanda on paper. So we do hope that President Biden and Congress will come together to expand work permits for long-term residents, because they've been living here a long time. These include the spouses of U.S. citizens, dreamers without DACA, and residents who have paid taxes and lived in the U.S. for many years. So if you are serious about wanting to solve our economic problems of inflation, of workforce shortages, of the not having our community members, our neighbors, not have the opportunities that they need in order to make our country successful, then I invite you to help us educate our Texas lawmakers about this policy of expansion of work permits by encouraging your local elected officials to support this effort. And you can do this in two ways. You can set up meetings with your local elected officials to talk with them about this issue and ask them to contact the White House and their local member of Congress. Or you can give them a letter that we currently have being circulated that's been signed by over 163 local elected officials nationwide, including some of the representatives who were here, like Jean Wu and John Rosenthal and Cristina Morales. If you'd like to share this letter with your local elected officials, Emiliano Valencia, our ABEC Texas Deputy Director, who's waving in the back, can provide you with that letter. You can also contact us about partnering locally on events, op-eds, and other activities to continue educating our community and the public about this critical issue. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.